referred a case for conflict-free case management, it's going to show up here as clinically eligible. So you would click on this in your dashboard and you'll see, as you can see, I got a bunch of cases that I've been referred, but this particular case that I've been working on, which is Mitch Album, is going to be the one that I wanted to show you as far as, the work that needs to be done to it. So you would open it, it would come up, and basically what's going to happen is it will show up that that basically, as hopefully this would be under Tri-County's name, the worker would be you, the disposition would be clinically eligible, actually the clinically eligible one you'd be using, and then the enrollment date. So you'd be opening that up, and once you open it, you're going to assign it to yourself. So what's going to happen is it's hopefully assigned to you, and the referring workers there. I'm going to change the status from clinically eligible to open now, because I'm going to work on it. It's going to become my record. I'm the case manager, and I'm going to go and save it. I'm not going to close it yet, though, because I'm just triple check to make sure everything's in my name. Now, the referring worker can be anybody. It would probably be Suzanne at this point, but you're going to be the service worker and you're going to be the primary worker. So you'd want to make sure that your name was the worker and the start date that you got the case, because that starts kind of like the timer that it's active, and then that the primary worker is you. If you needed to add your name on here, which you shouldn't because it would be brought to you, you can go to File and then assign service provider workers and add your name in and add your name as the primary. And then that way it would be assigned, but Suzanne will probably already do that for you. Once that's done and that part's in, just to go over things, you have essentially 3 days to do 2 things. The first of which is to send a letter explaining who you are to the client. And the reason why you need to do that is because CFCM requirements are that you, as the new case manager, introduce yourself. And as most people know, having it through first class mail is probably always the smartest idea, because a lot of the folks, especially at seniors, they don't know who you are. And even though you have credentials, sometimes it's a little more difficult. Whereas between the time that you set up a meeting for them and the time you physically go out, they probably received a letter, or the family that they live with has received a letter. Now, there could be some complications if this person, is in a state that they are not as cognizant of your presence or other things, and you have to work with the family on this. Conflict-free case management is supposed to be done as much as possible with the client themselves. But we all understand that if they live with a family and over the last few years they've had some declining health or mental health, of course, the family is going to be involved. And even though you're going to talk to the client as much as you can, the family will hopefully help. And there may be situations that the family hasn't gotten a POA for the person, or they don't have guardianship. It's kind of like, going through court and all the craziness that would have happened. Things kind of happen very fast. But the bottom line is that you're to do your best as you can to work with the client themselves. And if they're saying one thing and the family's saying the other, to be honest with you, the client is the one, as long as, they're competent and they don't have other kinds of legal, guardianship in their way, that it's their word over the family sometimes. So that can be kind of difficult. I know you guys know how to deal with that, but in the meantime, you got to get 2 things out: a letter out to the client explaining who you are, your information, and kind of, guiding them through what that next meeting is going to be. And then also you need to make a first phone call, whether it's successful or not, to the client, letting them know, that you're the new case manager, and as well as trying to set up an appointment with them to do the person-centered plan. So in order to do that, a couple of things are going to happen. You're going to get what they call a tickler, and they should come up pretty much automatically after you have selected the change the case over to open. They'd come up. But if they don't, I want you just to recognize that you'll have what they call a tickler's tab on the top of every window that you usually work from. And if ever they don't come up automatically, you can go into ticklers, and you're going to see a lot of them in this particular case, but I'll show you the two that are the most important. And you'll have one that is called first contact attempt, and you'll have another one that will be called, see the, I think it's in the next page. I hate to say it. They're just, I have a lot of, it'll be the first contact attempt and send the case manager introduction list. So these two. So new case, new person, first time, these two will be the ones that will come up in ticklers. If they don't, I can show you how to do them manually, but let me show you how to do this first. So as I said, the introduction letter is going to be the first thing that you do. You can click on it, and what's going to happen is the generic case manager introduction letter is going to come up for you to view, and it's also going to download a copy of it. It's going to have the person's name, so it'll be specific to that person's name. It'll give today's date, because as I said, you have 3 business days to get this letter out. Now, your case manager supervisor will be able to see whether you got it out or not. We do have some metrics and are creating more metrics. DHS will as well, and there'll be folks out there kind of looking, because there is a compliance through the CMS, which is our federal Medicaid and Medicare partner, to make sure these things happen. But you want to just make sure that we're not going to see that it went into the mailbox. We're just going to see that it went through. And one of the ways to kind of check on this is that you're going to go through it. If you want to use the downloaded copy and put specific text or information in, you have a copy that downloaded into Microsoft from Microsoft Word. You can open it and do any work you want. If you want to use the copy that's here and just make a small modification, you can do that. You could print it as it is, and you could do that as well. Sometimes, and I would say probably 50% of the time, this may be okay. And the other 50% of the time, you may have to go in there and make some changes, especially if you have a cell phone rather than a desk phone, and you want the people to call you on your work cell phone. You can't add anything into this right now as it is. It won't let you update. So you have to use the Word version, and then from the Word version, you would save it and print it. And then what I recommend that you do, because everything's about proof of you doing it, is that you would select the upload and save to a note. So I would use the upload and save to the note button. I would select it, and it would allow me then to take the version that I created in Word, which you'll see right here under downloads. See, I have a case manager introduction letter. I can select it. I'll hit open and watch what happens. The system will automatically add it as a note. They create it as a note. They'll put that letter in as a PDF, the one I, let's say, supposedly made changes to. And then that way I have proof, and it'll come into the, I have proof that I mailed it. I mean, we're not worried about it. Nobody's worried about you going to the mailbox and putting it in. We're just making sure that you have proof that you did that work, because these two things, other than the person-centered plan, are the big timers. And they only have 3 business days. And hopefully your supervisor gives you the referral the night before or first thing in the morning of the day you start, because the timer starts, and there is metrics on making sure this gets done. Now, once that happens, you can go in here and you can basically put in the division as LTSS. It's going to click in, put in the state agency and program as EAD. You can see red stars for all of these, so they're required. The note type becomes, depending upon what the selection, it could be an administrative entry, it could be person-centered planning, or it could be general or other, or it could be probably other. So there's not too many that you're going to pick right now, but for person-centered planning, I'd probably put this in for person-centered planning. And then you don't have to put a subtype, because it usually doesn't fit, but you would want to put some text in here stating that this is my copy of the case manager intro letter. Okay, what happens when you do that is you select append text to note. It tells you it was successful, and it date stamps and time stamps that, so everybody knows that you did it. Okay. It also then attaches the letter here to a note, and then you can change this based upon everything else to complete. Now, if you ever needed to alert yourself, if you've used APS, you can set it up as an alert. It'll pop onto the screen when you go into the case if there was something there as far as a note that you needed to attend to. But in this case, you finished the note, you finished the letter, and you're all done. So you can hit complete, and basically you can save it, and then it saves a copy of those notes, including the letter that you did for this client, and you can check one of the two requirements off of the system. Okay. Once I do that, I then have to make that first phone contact attempt. Now, again, the letter is on its way, but the people don't know who you are, so you're making kind of like a cold call. I'm sure you all had to do it before. The wizard should show up as a tickler. And as I say, I just went into a tickler. And basically now I need to fill out that contact. The rule of thumb for CFCM is anytime you need to initiate a phone call to the client, you have to create a contact form. Anytime you set up an appointment from that contact, you need to create an appointment, which is another form. So everybody's been asking me how they could get sidestep this a little bit, and there is a way to do it. It is a well-planned meeting in person. So that meeting in person that you have with the client, you could set up your next 2 or 3 appointments with them. So that way, if they did not call you and you did not have to call them back, you do not need to do an additional contact form. Okay. You can set up appointments for all those and have them notated that you have appointments once a month at a certain time, at a certain day, and in a certain hour. And that appointment is a phone contact. That way you don't have to do both a phone contact and an appointment, because everybody's like, that's like double the work. And I said, yes, it is. But if you're good and you can schedule things out, all you'd have to do is set up appointments for everybody because you've done all of your contact at that client meeting. So that may be a way for you to go. Maybe you guys have already thought of that. Maybe you haven't. Anybody have any questions on that? Because that can get monotonous as far as doing every time doing a contact form and every time doing an appointment form. But I'm just trying to have you think ahead as you do the phone call, you make that initial phone call. There's lots of things you can ask them for questions, kind of prime your in-person meeting, see if they are open to talking about themselves on the phone. They may not. They may say, no, I need to meet you in person. I'm not going to give you private information until I see you. I don't know who you are. You could be anybody asking me about my business. And they, of course, probably haven't gotten the letter yet. So that kind of hurts. But at the same time, if they are open and you've kind of greased the wheels a little bit, and depending upon the situation, they'd probably be more open to talk to you, and then you can learn some things about them to get you ready for your meeting with them in person. So needless to say, got to do a contact form for this. First one is a requirement of the process. And the contact form, again, is first contact. It's not successful and it's not unsuccessful. So if you make a phone call and you leave a message, unfortunately, that's not a successful contact. A successful contact is talking to the person themselves, unless there is a POA or guardianship or something that this person is not capable of talking to you. Now, if they've declined in health since their evaluation, if they've declined in health since other circumstances have happened, and now the parents are unable to communicate unless you're in person with them, and the family does most of the communication, you're going to have to note that, because the bottom line of CFCM is it's work with the client directly. The family is a great component to it, but unfortunately, as we've all known, families can kind of guide the parent in ways that they may not want to go, especially if the parent can speak for themselves freely, and it becomes kind of a tug of war between the daughter and the mother, or the son and the father, those kind of situations. So you guys have probably had good experience with that, but we've been noticing it, and it's always the best idea to make sure that you do the best you can to talk to the client themselves. Family can help, family can advise, but family cannot change the person's mind, decision, or what they want to do unless they're not in the position to make those judgments. So based upon that, I'm making my initial conversation with the person because it's my first time as the case manager. I'm keeping it in draft. The state agency and program is only going to give you HCBS for this, folks. I now have initiated the phone call, the best phone number that I have, and unfortunately, the contact was unsuccessful. The type of contact that I used was the initial for person-centered planning. Oh, what? Yeah, this is right. So every call you make under this situation has to be logged until you get to successful. That's why I'm saying you're going to spend quite a bit of paperwork time to get kind of things in order. And when you get there to the person and are physically there with them, try to set up as much as you can for the next 3 to 6 months, because that will keep down the number of calls you have to make and the number of contact forms you have to fill out, especially because God forbid they don't take your call when you call them back, or they don't take this or they don't take that. You are putting in contacts until you are successful. So there could be 2 or 3 contacts with them, trying to get them, leaving a message, talking to the daughter, but the mother didn't say yes, those kind of issues. So getting them in person would do a lot of good for you to get that done and kind of set that up ahead of time. And then you don't have to fill out all these forms. So, needless to say, they can never opt out of monthly contacts. Part of contact-free case management is a monthly contact with them. And this isn't something that I say have to be filled out on the form, but you just keep this as a no. The date of the contact, let's say we started it today, the person contacted type. Now, 9 times out of 10, we want to talk to the participant. But that if there is an individual representative or a family member, that can work, but you've got to put notes in there stating that, yes, I talked to daughter Sally, and Sally had, you know, mom next to her, and mom, didn't want to talk to me at this point, wants to talk to me in person, but Sally communicated everything to mom, and mom nodded, or mom agreed, or mom whatever else she did. You have a place to put notes of that in here, so you could put that in. But in this case, we're saying it's unsuccessful. We tried to contact the participant. We tried to contact them. It was 15 minutes or less, so you put in 15 minutes. If you get them talking, that's one of the benefits of getting early information from them. The person-centered plan, if you haven't noticed, which you guys all have, can take up to an hour and a half. There's lots of questions and lots of trying to navigate with what the person wants based upon what they've said. If they're not great communicators in person and they're better over the phone, you can use this time during the call, if you're successful talking to them, to get information regarding the person-centered plan to get it kind of started. And that's what I can suggest. You can go to the person-centered plan from here. You can minimize the screen if you wanted to, and you can minimize the main screen. Go back to the initial screen, which is here, and you could go right into the person-centered plan under plans as you get used to the system, and you can go in, and the initial plan is going to be there, because when DHS did their plan for the inter-I, it automatically created a person-centered plan. So you could go in here and start asking some general questions. You're not going to complete it over the phone, and you can't. You have to physically be there, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't ask them. We've had such, you could say, just having such a great conversation with you, Mr. Album. Are there things that are really working for you in your life right now as things are going along and you're living with your daughter or whatever your circumstances are? And they could spread out a whole bunch of information. That information is more than capable of being able to be put in the person-centered plan before you met. Okay, there's no reason why you can't utilize that time. Now, maybe they don't want to talk about it, but if they do, that gives you some input here right now on the person-centered plan to help you think of, what you're going to be talking to them about when you get there. This will be the biggest one, what's not working for them, because the goals for person-centered plan are usually things that are not working for them, and maybe things they need to feel that they improve upon. Like here's a great one. He's not a great talker. Pre-writing the questions that they answer verbally and writing is a good idea. I'm not a great eater. And if I'm physically there, I see that some, needs for organization, and the daughter worries about food intake. Some of this you can get on the phone. Some of this you can't. But it doesn't hurt to ask the questions because it will save you time when you're physically there working with the client. Because one, you're new to them, they're new to you. You don't know what kind of level of comfort they're going to have. There could be a bunch of different things. There's nothing that can hurt you asking or you getting questions. So, yes, a telephonic monthly check-in is considered an appointment. Some clients prefer us to speak to the children. That's fine, but get the client to make sure that you have that agreement from the client and then add it as a note, because the sad part of this is that though that may happen, the client still needs to be involved in that monthly check-in, whether they're sitting with them or that. It wouldn't be just that you'd make the call to the daughter and that would be the end of it. It would be something where the client is participating. If they're sitting there and just nodding or sitting there and saying yes, and the daughter's giving you a pile of information, so be it. But make a note of it. Right. And if you call multiple times and are not able to make the contact. So getting back to this and getting back to contact form, and we'll get back into that right now. You have up to 4 times to be unsuccessful. Okay. I would say at the third unsuccessful, and I wouldn't call them, within an hour of the last unsuccessful. Try to spread it out throughout those 3 days if you can. You have 3 days to do it. But let's say you call the first day, you didn't get it. Call the second day, didn't get it. Now at this point, you're kind of wondering, do I have the right phone number? Do I have the right information? This would be probably a time that, at least for the first couple, as you get used to it, you could touch base with Suzanne. Say, Suzanne, I've tried this client a couple times. I tried him in the morning on Monday, tried him in the afternoon on Tuesday. I'm on my third call. I called him at lunchtime, still getting nothing. It's either a fast busy or an answer machine. What do you suggest? Suzanne will then reach out to DHS, who probably we have 3 other systems for demographics for most of the clientele, and see if there's a family relation or another member of the family that they communicate with. If there is one, then they probably, through DHS, will send you down another contact number, another information. Not that the contact form will reset completely, but take a couple of times to try to contact them. Put it in the notes that you've been unsuccessfully able to, not able to contact them in a note, and then communicate back to Suzanne. You continue to have issues. There are people out there that don't want to be contacted. We've had issues right now where sadly the person doesn't have a telephone. The family has very limited phone work with them, and the PCA that they currently have is the only way to communicate with the person. Is that the best way to go? No, but if the PCA comes in every Tuesday and Wednesday, that's going to be, maybe at least for the first round until other things can be set up, the only way to get these people communicated with. So it is not perfect, but the bottom line of it is, the more you track, the easier it is for everybody to say, Lauren's done a great job. Katie's done a great job. We can't communicate with that person. What else can we do, DHS? And you do have, depending upon, there are deadlines, but with notification notes and putting it into that record about the issues that you have, it'll make it easier for us to get you more time, give you more flexibility, give you an easier time to have communication with the person. Or there's a change in status that nobody knew about, and somebody finally can get back to us. Because again, these people want the help and these people need the help. So the hope is that they are open for communication. If they're not, eventually what's going to happen is the case will revert back to DHS, and DHS is going to take longer. The person won't get the help as fast as they should have gotten. And unfortunately, if they wanted the service, it may be harder for them to get. So, you're providing them the faster way for them to get services. Before that, it would have been a different way. So they've got to hopefully work with us and give us information and details that help you get to them faster. So I know that's not the greatest answer, but it is one of the answers. It's kind of a two-way street. So needless to say, once this has been set up, let's say I've tried, you also have an option here. Let's say Katie goes on vacation and Lauren has to take one of Katie's referrals. Lauren needs to make the phone call. You still only have those 3 days. So if Lauren did it, then Lauren would make the call. Lauren called and communicated, or Lauren was unsuccessful, or whatever else she was. And then in here, let's say somebody was successful, then you would put the notes from the success. Great conversation. Answered some of the initial ECP questions. We best set up the meeting in person. Meeting set for 11:25 at 9 a.m. at person's home. Okay. One of the things I absolutely suggest in the note, because let's say you get a phone call or you have to do something else and then you forget what time and date you set, put it in the note for the contact if you are successful. So if I am successful, put it in the note. That way you can go back in here and copy it into the appointment that you have to create. Because of course you have to create an appointment when you finally get finalization of the appointment time, date after making the phone call. So do yourself a favor and put it in the note. Once you do that, it'll always be here. So let's say, if it was unsuccessful, I think I've gone over how to get through that. If it is successful, it's great. You don't have to make any further calls other than if you wanted to just make sure that everything's good the day before, you could do that. But any phone call that you make, you got to fill out the contact log. And the reason why you have to do that. Now, let's say we go back, it was unsuccessful. Only the first one is going to show up as a reminder to do. Okay. Under the initial one, that gets you out of the 3-day time situation. So let's say you come back to this on day 4. You couldn't make the conversation, but you've covered yourself and you have 20 days in total to get with this person and do the person-centered plan and then submit it to the state. It's not a lot of time. So as I say, try to get these appointments done and set up. Even if the person says, well, I can't meet till next Tuesday, that's fine. It could be 5 or 6 days away, but I've still got the appointment taken care of, the contact taken care of. My first 2 things are out of the way in the 3 days. So let's say we were unsuccessful. I'm going to save this, okay? And I'm going to close it. And basically what's going to happen, see how it's crossed out saying it's all done? I'm going to close it. And now I'm back to the main screen, which I'm going to find here. I'm back to the main screen. I'm like, well, wait a second. Now I've got to make another phone call. How do I do that? Other than the first one, which is that letter, everything else for forms are in here. So assessment and forms, I go into this tab, assessment and forms. I go under file and I select add new assessment form. When you go in here, one of the forms is the contact form. You won't see as many as I see right here. One of them is the contact form. When you open it, I'm back to the contact form again, making hopefully the next phone call, and hopefully I'm not having call 2 unsuccessful, but hopefully my contact is successful. One of the other things that you need to do that I didn't go over is when you're done making the phone call and whether it's unsuccessful or not, and it's completed, you need to change the status of this from draft to complete. So let me go back in real quick and just show you. This is my contact form that I just did a few minutes ago with everybody. It's unsuccessful. So before I close it, I needed to go into draft and complete it. Every call is a different individual form. So it does make a real high importance to make sure you finish this off by any of the information that you have. Even if it's not successful, you would save it as complete. Okay. So I'm going to go here to file and I'm going to save and close the assessment and form. And then as I say, the next time that I go in, I go under the assessment and the form tab and I make sure I open up a new form, which is the contact form. I go into assessments and forms and I open that up and I make my next call. Okay. Anybody have any questions so far? I know I'm running, kind of refreshing everybody on it and going through. We're definitely going to need to set up some time because we're already at 10:30. Does everybody have another 15 minutes to go over a few more things, or are you guys planned out with another meeting? We good for another 15 minutes? Okay, thumbs up.
Kevin, this is Suzanne. I
Hi.
am gonna have to leave, but if other staff wants to stay, that's fine.
Okay. Suzanne, why don't we look at a meeting, next week to just get everybody to that next place? I definitely think this part, even if we put you on the pilot, everybody's working on first. So I'll go
Mhm.
all the way up through that point just to kind of refresh everybody. Again, you folks all have access to the sandbox. So if you don't have a case that you've been playing around with in there, please go in and I'll put all our emails and everything in the chat. We meet every day for a half an hour from 1 to 1:30. So if you ever have any questions or comments, or you're playing around and you're having issues, just go to that chat. I'll put the chat and the email address in our chat. Okay. And that way you can always come in and check in. There's always somebody from our staff there.
Kevin, are there like dummy cases that me and Katie can just jump off from?
I can assign you a dummy case if you want, to make it easier. You guys should already have one because we kind of went through one, but I can definitely give you one that I have already built that you guys can play around with if you want. I'll put one in the chat, and
Yeah, if you could,
they're
because
open to
Katie and Nia,
reassign
they're so
a new.
new. This is actually their first
Yep.
time seeing the program, so
I thought so. Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to give you Mitch, the guy I'm working with right now, and you guys can go in there and play around with it. So just look for him. And if you want me to tweak it for you or do some other things for you, I can do that. But he's set up so I can help you. And that's fine. We'll get you there. Okay. So once you've done the contact form, again, a biggest part of everything is to set up that appointment. So you can see the tabs that are here. I have my demographics tab, which again is already filled out by the state. This is an alert that came up to remind me of something. But the one after the appointments and forms or the assessments and forms is appointments. So every time I have an appointment with the client, whether it's on the phone or physically at their residence or things like that, I have to put an appointment, and that way it kind of sets up the the WellSky calendar. I wish it was going to dump into your calendar, but it doesn't do that. But it will tell your supervisor that what kind of appointments you have, where they are, who they're with, those kind of things. So it's more for WellSky usage than it is for Outlook usage. But in the meantime, if I have a confirmed phone call that was successful and I was able to set up the appointment, I have to put the appointment in. So I go to the appointments tab, I go to file, I go to add appointment, and it comes up with another form. Okay. This form is only accessible through the appointments tab. So you can't go through the assessments and forms to find it. We did that a little differently to kind of separate how it's done. That way it's, and we're kind of up and down on how it went, but everybody wanted a separate appointment tab. So in doing that, I now will put in the start date for my appointment. So as I said, I set it up for next Monday, the 25th, and I set it up for 9 o'clock. So you can do this, and this is what I would recommend. You can look at it on Google to see what the address is of the person compared to where your office is. And let's say it's a 30-minute trip. Put it in. If it's supposed to be for 9 o'clock, my appointment physically will start at 8:30 a.m. because it's going to take me a half an hour to get there. Okay. It's going to end, and I would do yourself a favor, put it an hour and a half from that time that you're actually arriving. So in this case, I know I'm going to be there at 9, and I know I'm going to be done at 10:30, and I've got another half an hour to get back to the office. So realistically, the whole appointment, oops, I don't know why I just did that. I think my mouse just moved it. Let me go back here and fix that. There we go. The time I'm literally going to be done would be 10:30 with the person, but not back to the office until 11. So give yourself plenty of time. So that way it's legitimately, that extra time that you need in order to get back into the office. So that way, if your manager or supervisor looks and sees where you are, how long, how far, this and that to get back into the office, you have a full accurate time of the distance, the travel, and the appointment itself. And as I say, an hour and a half is going to be important because it's going to give you enough time to sit down with the person, get to know them, and hopefully have them feel comfortable with you to give the information I'm going to show you're going to need to get. What kind of appointment it is? It's the initial assessment or the initial person-centered plan. Initial assessment is done by the state, so you don't have to worry about that. You're going to deal with the initial person-centered plan. The second one after that, which is that next appointment, which hopefully you get set up right while you're there with the client, is the follow-up. That's the one that you're finished the person-centered plan. You've got to go back to the office and print it out, validate it, look at it, maybe check on it with a colleague, make sure it's exactly what it should be. Because once you get the sign off, you're going to scan it into the system, and the Department of Human Services is going to check it, audit it, make sure it's nice and strong. And I can go over a little bit of that today. And then they're going to validate it. They're going to authorize it for you. So that way you get it active and you're able to start pulling providers toward the person to help them. If it's not strong enough or it's not detailed enough, they could push it back for a revision, and then you go back and forth with them a couple of rounds. It could take longer than you'd like. So it's always good to have that. But at least for this one, it's the initial person-centered plan. Any information that you have, maybe maybe they want to meet you in the back porch because they're, God forbid, have a really, the house isn't the way they want it and they really struggle. And that may be a note of observation that you make. But they have a dog in the yard, so you can put something in there just to remind yourself. The status at this point, when all of this is put in, is now considered scheduled. Okay, there are different ones. There's a pending, which we've never probably used. Completed means you finish this. So once the appointment is done, you've met with the person, you come back into the office, that's when you'd want to change it to completed. God forbid they cancel on you, or the family cancels, or there's an illness, you would change it to cancel. Doing that allows you to trigger a new appointment using some of the information here. So it's good to put that in after you find out. A no-show does that as well. Reschedule does that as well. But at this point, it's considered scheduled. And when I'm done with this, I will go into file and I will save and close the appointment. When I do that, it saves it to the system. So then it will show you a list of all the appointments you have for this client. As you're going to see, I have a bunch, but it sets it up right here that I have an initial PCP set up for the 25th at 8:30 to 11, and I have a reminder: consumer has issues with home and wants to meet on the back porch. Note, there's a dog in the yard. Okay. So all those things are going to be in there. And that, again, may look like some duplicitous work between the contact form and the appointment, but it is the best and only way right now through the plan to get things going. Okay. Anybody have any questions? As I say, paperwork is important. There's a lot of documentation that the government requires. We'll try to sidestep you through a few things, but majority say you will be usually doing a contact form and an appointment unless you pre-set up your contact information with the person to kind of plan things out, and then you'd still be doing the appointment. Okay. After that is done, you are now done with that first 3 days requirement. And again, an unsuccessful phone call is just as important as a successful one with that 3 days. If you need longer to make those calls and get that meeting set up, you have it as long as you've made that first contact attempt. After that, though, let's say we are meeting with the person and we've done, we're ready to go and we're going to physically be with the person. It will depend on how you want to go about doing this. You may have a hotspot access to log into WellSky while you're there. You may want to print out the plan and kind of run it on paper with the person as like a questionnaire type of thing. It's going to be kind of your preference, depending upon how things go, but you will have to move it into a real plan and real electronic component of this after you meet with the client. So it becomes whatever way your agency usually works. Some folks will go hotspot. Some folks ask for Wi-Fi. Some people use their phones to tie in for hotspot. Some people will use paper. Okay. If you need to have paper, okay, you're going to get basically what's going to happen is you're going to go into the plans tab. Under the plans tab, there'll be a plan that gets started, kind of like a template one. You can go into that. And as you can see, there's a lot of information here on different details. The plan information basically will have your name on it. You're going to be the worker. Okay, so this will have your name on it. It will also have the current status will be initial. Okay. And when you're done with the entire plan and everything's finished, this will be the place that you're going to send it to Suzanne. You'll put her name in here, and she will then forward it to DHS as she looks at it. So as I say, there's a couple of different components here that your first sitting is going to be tough to kind of go through. I don't want to get buried in it, but I do want to show you the plan itself. As you can see, there are 6 tabs. We definitely need to go through this again, but under here is plan forms. This is where the person-centered plan is. And you'll see a draft version of that person-centered plan when I go in here. Now, it has a workflow wizard that'll come up, and you'll be seeing that. Let me just see if I can get around that real quick. Yeah. And if I have an initial person-centered plan, let me unlock the record so you can see it. It's going to populate with some of the demographics from the person. You'll be putting in the initial. Your name will already be there, and the status will be pending. Usually it may be even draft. Okay. Then you're going to have, as I say, the general questions. Now, everything with a red star has to be put in. Otherwise, the system will not be able to save it in any status other than draft. So this is voluntary, but it's a good idea to have it in there. So location, client's home, the date, as I say, we're going to make the date 11/25. So let me just change this. And the time's going to be 9 a.m. Oops. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Once that's put in, I also want to put in who's attended. Maybe there's a family member that shows up out of the blue and you didn't know that Uncle Charlie was going to be there and he has 100 questions. Good idea to put anybody that was going to be there, especially if there's anybody that shows up. They may have a RIPIN rep, they may have somebody else, depending upon the circumstance. That's where I say then you get down to. Now, these goals right here are not required, but they are great to help you make a good goal. And right now, we're only requiring one goal to be done. But I will tell you, here's the background rule on this goal. They have the opportunity to refuse it or a week or so later, or say that they can't do it, or you need to make changes. Every time you have to go in here and update the goal, you have to revalidate it and you have to reauthorize it with the state. So the rule of thumb would be to help you is to do multiple goals up front. That way, if the client decides not to work on this goal, you still have another goal to work from that you can make as the primary goal for at least then. Give the person a month or two to kind of work through that goal and then add another goal. Only one active goal is required for the person-centered plan at this time. So making multiple goals kind of helps you and allows you not to have to go back and do another physical person-centered plan, sit down with the person. But if you don't have more than one goal and the person kind of reneges or refuses or is obstinate or decides that this goal isn't for them, you're going to be making another personal trip to physically sit down with this person and update the person-centered plan. So do yourself a favor in that first meeting, make multiple goals. Now you don't have to make 3, 4, or 5 goals, but a good solid 2 goals would be important. Now, here's the part that's important. Goal 1, I want to is what the client says to you, because you're going to ask them, what do you want to do to help maybe some of these, things that are not working for you? And you already have a list because that's the first thing you did. And whether it was required or not, you did it. And they're going to say, you know what? I want to eat more regularly and gain weight over losing it because they're afraid that maybe they're having a weight issue, they're losing weight, and because they're losing weight, they could go back into the hospital. They could have some, nursing home treatment. They could have other things, and they know it. They're not dumb about it. They know it. So eating more regularly would help. Maybe the daughter makes a ton of meals, leaves them meals every day, and none of them get eaten because there's nobody home most of the day until like 6 o'clock. Maybe the person gets up late and they go to bed early. So they miss out on any family meal time. So, right now the priority ranking for this particular goal, and this comes from the client, so you can help them, but it's kind of like a quote coming from the client. What do you want to do, Mrs. Johnson? And she'll say, I don't want to do anything. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. Well, we do need to have a couple of goals here, even if they're small little goals. What are you bothered by? You look back to the things that aren't working, and maybe they could be a little more mobile or this or that or something. Getting up or doing the laundry or folding. They may also say that they can do a ton of things, and the daughter's behind them saying no, they can't do any of this. So you're going to have to make kind of a compromise and think about what the client says they can do over what the family says they can do, and maybe create a happy medium for a goal. Make the goal, though, not a goal that they can complete in the first month. It's as I say, if they don't like it and they refuse it, that's one part of you making another personal visit out. If they complete the goal too soon, you also have to go out and make another visit. So try to make the goal something that they can work towards, not work and complete quickly. So eat more regularly doesn't say when, and gain weight doesn't say how much. There is a place, though, right here underneath that you will put a measurable and observable expectation. So, time frame, I will eat one meal per day at family meal times, 5 days a week. Family meal time is at 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. So twice a day they have the opportunity to eat with the family. Everybody's together for breakfast before they go out. They've either got to get themselves up early to eat that breakfast or stay up long enough in the afternoon to eat with them for dinner. That's the goal. Now, this may not happen, in the first month. It may take them, they're sporadic. She gets up mornings twice a week. She stays up evenings 3 times a week. That's eventually what you get. Maybe you get, you know, once every 3 days this works, and then a couple days it doesn't. So they're still in progress. They haven't failed. Any progress is better than no progress. So the thought is, okay, for this one, is that you put it in a number of times per day and number of days per week. That's your measurable and observable method. Could be for anything. We've had ones for toileting. We've had ones for cleaning your clothes. We've had ones for a bunch of different things. Again, original goals coming from the client, because without their buy-in, they won't do it. And then your part of it is trying to help them forge together an objective that's wide enough, large enough, and long enough that they can work on, that doesn't complete in a week and it doesn't fail in a week. So think about something large enough. There are background and barriers to meeting. Mitch's participation is needed. Family participation needed to track the goal and meeting goal. Schedule a waking, sleeping may be an issue. So the family will have to be involved, or somebody will have to be involved to track this. You're not there every day when either get up or don't get up, or go to bed or don't go to bed. But you can bring a small spreadsheet or something you can fill out, have it in their hands so they can start doing it, see how well that goes. But having it ahead of time or having it at that second meeting when they sign things is important. Then the action steps: breakfast. Family will wake Mitch up at 8 a.m. for breakfast reminder. Family will track measurable attempts to eat daily, spreadsheet provided. Okay. And the person responsible is the grandson. Bob will wake Mitch daily, Mitch's daughter Sally to feed, daughter to track. So all of these things are there kind of as an example. All right. The date you're going to start is a few weeks after the person-centered plan is done. So you can't make it start the day you create the person-centered plan, because you need, if there's a provider involved or other people involved, they're not there to get this plan activated. Probably takes about a week. So give yourself between a week and 10 days from the date you physically were with the person to put down the start date. End date would be a year from that date, because it's an annual goal. That's why I'm saying make the goal wide enough and broad enough so that it can be used over the year. These are good things to have over the year. It's not perfect, and you can do it less than a year, but you are going, if it's the only goal they have and they don't have multiple goals, you will be going out there to update their person-centered plan physically. If that happens, you can do one big goal, another little smaller than that. So if one or two of them end before the year, you're okay, because this is still the wide-ranging goal that's still in progress. And then, the status of the goal right now, it's in progress. It has met or not met. So depending upon when this ends, that's when you'd rank it from in progress to not met or met. Okay. And then the first status would be the day of the day that you kind of put it in. So whatever day I put it in, I put that progress. And then if there's a second goal, I hit the checkbox and another goal comes up. As you can see, no red stars, so it's not required to do the second goal. But I swear to you, it is a very, very good idea to have a backup goal in case the person decides the first goal is not good enough, not enough, or if refuses. Once they refuse, you have to have that second goal and you're making a trip. Other things that are not required but are good to have, important to them or for them. Having friends and family is important to them, and important for them is to socialize. So that could be, it could be a family member, it could be a person too. Really important to have my grandson, really important for this. And then other things that can help them, factors considered when helping me choose services. It could be the cost of care, needs and risks, service tier, approved hours, and monthly budget. Could be all of them, could be none of them. They may want everybody to do everything for them. They may want to take some control. Based upon how they answer this, will help you understand that. What is their living preference? Do they have employment? Are they interested? Are they completely retired? Or are they looking for a job? There are programs out there and money out there to help them retrain, to help them work part-time, everything else. And then the kind of resident type they have, they're living in a home of another or living in their own home. Those two are required. And then you have some non-required unpaid supports. To give you a quick example, Uncle Bob is a great friend to Mitch. Okay. When Uncle Bob comes over, who's his uncle but not uncle, he eats his meals. He's on time, he's on track. If we're starting to have trouble with Mitch eating his meals, maybe giving Uncle Bob a call as you as the case manager, because Sally can't get him to come over, but maybe you can twist his arm, say, Bob, Mitch really loves when you come over. He eats his meals. He's close to going back into the hospital. We're really concerned. Any chance you could go and, add a day? Tuesday is your regular day. Could you come in on Friday or maybe every other Friday? He'll eat his meals. He'll be in a better mood and you really help him. You're a great cheerleader for him not to go in the hospital. And most people will never say no. Of course I can, but I can't come over for more than 2 hours. Great. Would 11 to 1 be okay? Yeah, I can do that. We'll play some cards. We'll eat some pizza. We'll do that. Great. Now you got a meeting another day, and you work it from there. Maybe there's another person, but adding these in the first meeting helps you. So you're not spending a ton of time making phone calls trying to find out who his other folks are. It also has, are there services that were ever declined to him? Not available or inaccessible? There may be, and then it will ask you, maybe he had trouble one time with statewide transport, bad experiences, wants to go on RIPTA instead of as a backup, anything else that's been declined to him. As you can see, they're required, so you're going to have it. And then you also have backup plans that you can put in, not required, but good to have. And then you also, if the person has a behavior plan, put that in. And then the other part of it, because again, as much as this plan is a big thing, you also will see that there are crisis and safety plans as a part of this. Getting the person to have this somewhere that they're looking at it on a regular basis and use it as a form is going to be helpful to you. So having this stuff filled out would be great. It's not required, but if you want them to look at their plan and know their plan to the best, it's a great thing to have. So if you can get this filled out, that's great. And then the last thing here, how you're setting your cadence. Again, a month is about 4 to 6 weeks. So if every 4 weeks they don't want to be contacted and you've made an agreement to 6 weeks, that's okay. But don't go any further than that because they have to have contact with you on a monthly, quote unquote, monthly basis. And if they don't or they refuse, this program is voluntary, giving them higher access to services and providers and your case management. That means that DHS would have to take the case back, which nobody wants them to do because they're limited, and they would have much less chances to get new providers, chances to make changes or updates. Not that they won't get it, they just won't get it as fast as with you. So it's advantageous if they want this to work. Okay. Okay. Suggestions for, right. Yeah. That's the nonverbal family and the dementia family. That's going to come down. Sorry, Katie. That's going to come down to a situation where you are documenting that they are that the family's kind of in control here, even though there's not legal documentation. You're doing your best to work with the patient where they're at, but also get the guidance from the family where they are. And putting that in as a note will be helpful. Rubric. No, we're not giving you a person-centered plan requirement rubric because we want to see what you come up with first and do kind of an organic. You will have Suzanne looking it over, and DHS will also know. You'll get some detail on a general understanding for requirements, but you're not going to get handheld on the person-centered plan um, language and things, just because we want to tap into your social case management work and your experience and give you that kind of hands-on work as you go along. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with what we give you, but if we give you like all these cases, it's going to make it look too cookie cutter. And each, as you know, each client always has something different. And then, okay, how will we start end date work? Right. So here's how that part of it works. So you're going to probably get a case that probably has 4 to 6 months left on the inter assessment as it is built. So in your planning, as you continue to plan with this person, you know in 4 to 6 months, you're going to have to do a new inter. Getting the person-centered plan in now, because your eyes are on the ground and you're working with them, should be fine. You should get one that can still give you that year. But you're going to also have to make another visit for the inter and that kind of assessment. So plan that out in your thought of this person for a year, because you're going to have them over the year and look at it. That could be at the 4 month or the 6 month. You can always do the inter early. So let's say that the inter is due in 7 months, but you have a 6 month in-person meeting with the person. Then you can do the inter at 6 months. Have that combined with your meeting with the person, so that way you don't have two separate meetings. The inter though is a 2.5 hour assessment. So you may have to do it in 2 visits. So that may be something you have to think about. But kind of thinking about this person and the idea of a year and what you can do with them at each meeting that you physically go out and each meeting you talk to them on the phone will be important. And I know it's not going to be easy up front, but usually once the case is kind of worked through for about 45 days, you kind of get a good cadence. You know the person enough, you know the family enough, you know how things are going to react, how well they're taking care of the person, how organized and planned they are to keep up with maybe some of the details that you have or some of the goals you have. Nothing's going to be perfect, but giving you that understanding within a shorter period of time is going to be helpful for you. I know there's no perfect answer to this, but I think that helps. Um, is there anything else that anybody has a question for? I don't want to go over too much more at this point. I think we should meet next week. I'll ask Suzanne, especially because you guys are new. I'm going to give you the manual that goes over all of this. I just didn't want to do that because I can run through it a little faster this way, and you have the video to look at. I will give you this video as well, and we'll go through that. The next part of it is more detail on finishing it. But you have at least the first 3 weeks of work over the hour we've just spent. So those are the things you do in the first 3 weeks. That connection with the client, the contact form, the appointment, and the person-centered plan. After that, it comes down to service codes and other things that we're still working on. But I don't want you to think that it's not going to go over it. We're going to go over it. I'm going to start having probably, as I say, regular meetings, and we'll give you all the things. So I'm going to put in a few things into the chat that you guys will have. I'll also get Suzanne access if you haven't. We gave Suzanne a copy of the book. It's 157 pages. I just kind of ran through the 60 pages that you needed to go over in the hour and a half, but we'll give you the real book. I'll send her an updated copy. We haven't updated it, but I'll do that and I'll put in the chat. So here's a couple of things you need to know. I'm going to stop the recording first. Okay. And